In the vast emptiness of space where stars burned like distant candles and galaxies stretched endlessly, humanity had carved out an empire. It wasn't just any empire. It was one built on strength, innovation, and a relentless will to survive. Humanity had come so far from its humble beginnings on Earth, spreading across star systems, colonizing planets, and creating alliances with other species. But there was something about humans that set them apart from every other race in the galaxy: their courage. They feared nothing, or at least that's what they believed. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, his flagship, staring out at the endless blackness through the massive viewport. His eyes were sharp, scanning the horizon for anything unusual. He wasn't a tall man, but he carried himself with authority, his broad shoulders and steady gaze earning him respect wherever he went. Beside him stood Lieutenant Olivia Grant, her slender frame leaning slightly against the railing as she studied the tactical display on her wrist console. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her blue eyes flickered with intelligence. Together they made a formidable team. The mission today was simple, or as simple as missions got in this part of the galaxy. Reports had been coming in from deep space scouts about strange activity near the edge of human-controlled territory. Ships disappearing without warning, colonies reporting eerie disturbances, and whispers of something lurking in the shadows. At first, many dismissed it as paranoia or faulty equipment, but when 3 scout vessels vanished within days of each other, command took notice. The decision was made quickly: send the best. And so, here they were, leading a fleet of warships toward the unknown. Ryan glanced over at Olivia. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with curiosity. She didn't look up immediately, her fingers still dancing across the holographic interface. After a moment, she sighed and met his gaze. "I think we're walking into something bigger than we realize," she said. Her tone was measured, but there was no mistaking the tension beneath her words. "Whatever's out there, it's not natural." Ryan nodded slowly. He trusted Olivia's instincts more than anyone else's. She had a knack for seeing patterns others missed, for piecing together fragments of information until the whole picture became clear. If she thought this was trouble, then it probably was. As the fleet moved deeper into uncharted space, the mood aboard the ships grew heavier. Conversations among the crew were quieter now, punctuated by nervous laughter or forced jokes. Even the most seasoned veterans couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting silently in the darkness. The sensors picked up nothing unusual, at least not yet, but that did little to ease the growing unease. Then finally, contact was made. It started with a faint blip on the long-range scanners, barely noticeable amidst the cosmic noise. But as the fleet drew closer, the signal grew stronger, resolving into dozens of shapes moving rapidly toward them. Ryan's heart skipped a beat as he watched the shapes materialize on the main screen. They weren't human ships. These vessels were sleek and angular, their surfaces shimmering like liquid metal under the light of distant stars. They moved with an unnatural grace, weaving between each other in perfect synchronization, as if guided by a single mind. "Identify," Ryan ordered, his voice cutting through the tense silence on the bridge. The communications officer hesitated before responding. "No response, sir. We've tried all known frequencies. They're ignoring us." Ryan clenched his jaw. Ignoring them? That wasn't good. Most races, even hostile ones, would at least acknowledge communication attempts before attacking. The silence felt deliberate, almost predatory. He exchanged a glance with Olivia, who looked equally troubled. Before anyone could say another word, the alien ships opened fire. Bright streaks of energy shot through space, slamming into the shields of the human vessels. Alarms blared as explosions lit up the void, sending shockwaves rippling through the fleet. The crew scrambled to respond, returning fire with everything they had. Lasers and plasma bolts flew back and forth, painting the battlefield with flashes of light and bursts of destruction. Despite the chaos, Ryan remained calm. Years of training and experience kicked in, allowing him to focus despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Return fire," he barked, his voice steady and commanding. "Target their lead ship." The gunners complied, unleashing a barrage of missiles and energy beams at the largest alien vessel. For a moment, it seemed like they might gain the upper hand. The enemy formation wavered and several smaller ships broke off to avoid the assault. But then, something changed. The aliens regrouped with terrifying speed, their movements fluid and precise. They didn't retreat or falter. Instead, they pressed forward, closing the gap between the two fleets. Their weapons struck with devastating accuracy, disabling engines and breaching hulls. Ship after ship fell victim to the relentless onslaught. Olivia gripped the railing tightly, her knuckles turning white as she watched the carnage unfold. "This isn't right," she muttered under her breath. "They're too coordinated, too instinctual." Ryan heard her but didn't respond immediately. He was busy issuing orders, trying to rally the remaining ships and form a defensive perimeter. But deep down, he knew she was right. These aliens weren't fighting like any race they'd encountered before. There was no hesitation, no fear. They acted purely on reflex, driven by some primal force that defied logic. As the battle raged on, Olivia continued to observe. Her mind raced, analyzing every detail, searching for a pattern or weakness. And then she saw it, not all at once, but gradually, piece by piece. When human pilots charged head-on, the aliens countered with overwhelming force. But when pilots hesitated, showing signs of fear or uncertainty, the aliens faltered. Their attacks became erratic, almost confused, as if unsure how to respond to such behavior. Her eyes widened as realization dawned. "Ryan," she said urgently, grabbing his arm. "We need to change tactics. Now." He turned to her, his brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "They feed on fear," she explained quickly. "That's why they're so effective. Our aggression fuels them, but our hesitation throws them off balance. We need to use that against them." Ryan stared at her for a moment, weighing her words. It sounded crazy, but desperate times called for desperate measures. He nodded sharply. "All right, let's test it." He issued new orders to a small squadron of fighters, instructing them to engage the enemy using unpredictable maneuvers. Instead of charging directly, they were to feign retreats, zigzag wildly, and generally act as erratically as possible. To everyone's surprise, it worked. Whenever the humans behaved unpredictably, the aliens stumbled, their flawless coordination breaking down. A glimmer of hope sparked among the crew. Maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide of this battle. But the fight was far from over. The aliens adapted quickly, learning to anticipate some of the humans' tricks. Casualties mounted and morale began to waver. Still, Ryan and Olivia refused to give up. They knew they had found a chink in the enemy's armor, and they intended to exploit it fully. Little did they know, however, that this discovery would lead to something far greater and far stranger than anyone could have imagined. End of document, Part 1. The battle raged on, the void of space lit up by explosions and streaks of energy. The human fleet fought with everything they had, but the alien ships seemed to move like a single organism, their actions synchronized in a way that defied explanation. Captain Ryan Carter gripped the railing on the bridge of the Eclipse, his knuckles white as he watched the chaos unfold. Despite the initial success of Olivia's erratic tactics, the aliens were adapting, learning to counter even the most unpredictable maneuvers. It was as if they could sense fear itself, feeding off it to fuel their relentless assault. Lieutenant Olivia Grant stood beside him, her eyes glued to the tactical display. Her mind raced, trying to piece together a new strategy. She had always been the thinker, the one who saw patterns where others saw only chaos. But this time the pattern wasn't enough. They needed something more, something completely unexpected. Something that would throw the aliens off balance for good. Ryan glanced at her, noticing the intensity in her expression. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice calm despite the turmoil around them. Olivia hesitated, her lips parting, as if she wasn't sure how to put her thoughts into words. Finally, she spoke. "We've been fighting them on their terms," she said. But what if we changed the rules entirely? What if we did something so strange, so human, that they wouldn't know how to respond? Ryan frowned. Like what? She paused, her gaze shifting to the viewport where the alien ships darted like insects. Emotion, she said finally. They feed on fear, right? But what happens if we give them something else? Something they don't understand? Ryan raised an eyebrow. You mean happiness? Exactly, Olivia replied, her voice gaining confidence. Think about it. These creatures operate on instinct. Fear is primal. It's something they recognize and exploit. But laughter, joy, those are uniquely human emotions. They might not know how to process them. Ryan stared at her for a moment, considering the idea. It sounded absurd, almost laughable itself. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and besides, they didn't have many options left. All right, he said finally. Let's try it. The plan was simple, or as simple as anything could be in the heat of battle. They would equip several fighters with audio transmitters, capable of broadcasting human laughter into space. The goal was to confuse the aliens, disrupt their hive-like coordination, and create openings for the fleet to exploit. But there was a catch. The pilots themselves would need to laugh during combat. Not fake laughter either. Real, genuine laughter. The kind that came from the gut and spread like wildfire. Ryan called a meeting with the squadron leaders, explaining the plan. At first, the room was silent, the pilots exchanging skeptical glances. Then, slowly, a few chuckles broke out, followed by outright laughter. The absurdity of the situation hit them all at once. Laughter in the middle of a life or death battle. It sounded ridiculous. But as the laughter spread, something shifted. The tension in the room melted away, replaced by a strange sense of camaraderie. For the first time in hours, the crew felt alive. Ethan Blake, a young recruit fresh out of training, struggled to keep a straight face. He was seated at the back of the room, his cheeks flushed as he tried and failed to stifle a giggle. When Ryan noticed, he pointed at Ethan and grinned. You, he said. You're going to be our test pilot. Ethan's eyes widened. Me, sir? I'm not sure. You're perfect, Ryan interrupted, his tone light but firm. If anyone can pull this off, it's you. Ethan swallowed hard, nodding reluctantly. He wasn't exactly known for his bravery, but if the captain thought he could do it, then maybe he could. Besides, how hard could it be to laugh in the face of danger? The modified fighters launched moments later, their engines roaring as they sped toward the enemy formation. Ethan led the charge, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been in a real battle before, let alone one involving laughter as a weapon. But as he approached the alien ships, he reminded himself of the plan. Just laugh, he thought. That's all you have to do. The aliens opened fire immediately, their weapons cutting through space with deadly precision. Ethan swerved to avoid the blasts, his hands gripping the controls tightly. He could feel the fear creeping in, threatening to overwhelm him. But then he remembered the laughter. Taking a deep breath, he activated the transmitter and let out a loud, nervous chuckle. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The alien ships hesitated, their movements faltering for just a split second. Encouraged, Ethan forced himself to laugh harder, the sound echoing through space. To his surprise, the aliens began to waver, their attacks becoming less coordinated. One ship veered off course, colliding with another in a burst of sparks and debris. Holy crap, it's working! Ethan shouted into the comms, his laughter turning genuine as excitement took over. Behind him, the rest of the squadron followed, suit, their laughter joining his in a cacophony of joy that filled the battlefield. Back on the Eclipse, Ryan and Olivia watched the scene unfold with a mix of awe and disbelief. The alien ships were breaking formation, their pilots seemingly unable to cope with the onslaught of laughter. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet as human fighters darted between them, picking off targets with ease. For the first time since the battle began, humanity held the upper hand. This is insane, Ryan muttered, shaking his head. Absolutely insane. But it's working, Olivia replied, a grin spreading across her face. I told you. They don't understand emotion like we do. To them, this must seem like madness. Ryan couldn't argue with that. Whatever the reason, the plan was succeeding beyond their wildest expectations, but he knew better than to celebrate too soon. The aliens still outnumbered them, and their queen ship, the largest and most heavily armed vessel, remained untouched. If they wanted to win, they would need to take it down. "We need to press the advantage," Ryan said, turning to Olivia. "Can we replicate the laughter effect on a larger scale?" Olivia nodded. "We can amplify the signal using the Eclipse-Ohm's main transmitter. It won't be as precise as the fighter broadcasts, but it should cover a wider area." "Do it," Ryan ordered, "and prepare a strike team. We're going after the Queen ship." As the fleet regrouped, the engineers worked frantically to modify the Eclipse's systems. Meanwhile, Ryan assembled a small team of volunteers for the dangerous mission. Among them was Ethan, whose unexpected bravery had earned him a spot on the roster. The young pilot looked nervous but determined, his earlier laughter giving him a newfound confidence. When the preparations were complete, Ryan addressed the team. "This isn't just about winning a battle," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "This is about proving that we're more than just machines or instincts, we're human. And no matter how advanced or powerful our enemies may be, they'll never understand what makes us truly strong." The team nodded, their resolve hardening. They knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes. This was their chance to turn the tide, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. With the amplified laughter signal broadcasting across the battlefield, the strike team launched toward the Queen ship. Its massive form loomed ahead, AE, dark shadow against the stars. As they approached, Ryan activated his own transmitter, letting loose a hearty laugh that echoed through the cockpit. Around him, the rest of the team joined in, their voices blending into a symphony of defiance. The Queen ship shuddered under the assault, its defenses wavering as the laughter disrupted its internal systems. For the first time, the aliens showed signs of panic, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Ryan seized the opportunity, leading the team in a daring attack that pushed the enemy to the brink of collapse. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, hope flickered in the hearts of the human crew. They had faced an enemy unlike any other, one that thrived on fear and instinct, but they had found a way to fight back, not with brute force but with something far more powerful, the uniquely human ability to find joy even in the darkest moments. As the laughter continued to echo through space, Ryan couldn't help but smile. Maybe, just maybe, they really could win this fight. End of document. Part 2. The strike team hurtled toward the Queen ship, their fighters weaving through the chaos of battle like tiny sparks in a storm. The amplified laughter signal from the Eclipse had thrown the alien fleet into disarray, but the Queen ship remained a formidable opponent. Its massive hull bristled with weapons, its surface shimmering like molten silver under the light of distant stars. It was clear that this vessel wasn't just a command center, it was the heart of the Zetherian hive mind, the source of their coordination and power. Captain Ryan Carter tightened his grip on the controls, his jaw set with determination. He glanced at the readouts on his dashboard, noting the ship's defenses were still active despite the confusion caused by the laughter. Behind him, Ethan Blake and the rest of the strike team followed closely, their laughter fading as they approached the looming threat. This was no time for jokes, the mission ahead was deadly serious. As they drew closer, the Queen ship responded with a barrage of energy blasts, each one powerful enough to vaporize a fighter in an instant. Ryan swerved to avoid the incoming fire, his movements sharp and precise. "Stay tight," he shouted over the comms. "We need to get inside before they can regroup." Inside. That was the key. The team's plan was bold and risky. They would attempt to breach the Queen ship's outer defenses and infiltrate its interior, where they hoped to disrupt the hive mind directly. But getting there would be no easy task. The aliens weren't about to let them waltz in unchallenged. Ethan's voice crackled over the comms, tinged with nervous excitement. "How do we even know this will work?" he asked, dodging another blast as his fighter shimmied violently. "We don't," Ryan replied bluntly. "But if we don't try, we're finished anyway." Olivia Grant's voice joined the channel, calm and steady despite the tension. She was coordinating the operation from the eclipse, her tactical expertise guiding the team every step of the way. "Focus on the weak points near the rear thrusters," she instructed. "That's your best chance to break through." Ryan nodded, relaying the information to the team. "You heard her. Target the thrusters and stay close to the hull. Use it for cover if you have to." The fighters adjusted their course, skimming along the surface of the Queen ship. The metal beneath them pulsed faintly, as though alive and strange. Insect-like drones emerged from hidden hatches, swarming toward the intruders. These smaller craft buzzed around the humans like angry hornets, firing rapid bursts of energy that forced the team to scatter. "Take out the drones," Ryan barked, unleashing a volley of missiles at the nearest swarm. Explosions erupted across the hull, sending shards of debris spinning into space. Ethan mimicked the maneuver, his hands trembling slightly as he lined up his shots. To his relief, the drones disintegrated under the assault, clearing a path forward. But the victory was short-lived. As the team neared the thrusters, the Queen ship unleashed a new weapon, a wave of sonic energy that rippled outward, shaking the fighters violently. Alarms blared in Ryan's cockpit as his systems flickered, threatening to fail. He gritted, his teeth fighting to maintain control. "Hold steady," he yelled. "Don't lose formation." The strike team fought back against the onslaught, their laughter transmitters still broadcasting into the void. The sound seemed to weaken the effects of the sonic attack, giving them just enough stability to push onward. Finally, after what felt like hours of relentless combat, they reached the target area. "Now," Olivia commanded, "fire everything you've got." Missiles streaked from the fighters, slamming into the Queen ship's thrusters with devastating force. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the vessel, causing parts of its armor to buckle and collapse. A gaping hole opened in the hull, exposing the inner workings of the ship. It was a narrow opening, barely large enough for the fighters to slip through, but it was their only chance. "Go, go, go," Ryan ordered, leading the charge into the breach. One by one, the fighters disappeared into the darkness of the Queen ship's interior, leaving the battlefield behind. Inside the alien vessel, the atmosphere was eerie and oppressive. The walls glowed faintly, pulsating with a sickly green, light that cast long shadows across the corridors. Strange organic structures jutted out from the ceiling and floor, resembling veins or roots. The air hummed with a low, droning noise that vibrated through the fighters' cockpits, making it hard to concentrate. Ryan scanned the surroundings, his eyes narrowing as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. "This place, it's like some kind of living organism," he muttered. Ethan stared wide-eyed at the alien architecture, his earlier confidence wavering. "It's gross," he whispered, "like we're flying inside a bug or something." "Stay focused," Ryan snapped, though not unkindly. "We're here to shut this thing down, not sightsee." The team moved deeper into the ship, following Olivia's directions as she guided them toward the core of the hive mind. Along the way, they encountered more resistance, swarms of drones and automated turrets that sprang to life as they passed. The fight was brutal, forcing the team to rely on quick reflexes and teamwork to survive. Each skirmish left them battered, but determined, their resolve growing stronger with every obstacle they overcame. Finally, they reached their destination, a massive chamber filled with glowing tendrils that pulsed with energy. At the center of the room was a towering structure, its surface covered in intricate patterns that shifted and changed like living code. This was the heart of the Zetherian hive mind, the source of their collective consciousness. "This is it," Olivia said over the comms, her voice tinged with awe. "That structure is controlling everything. If we can disable it, we might be able to collapse the entire network." "But how?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "It looks indestructible." "It's not," Ryan replied firmly. "Nothing. As we hit it with everything we've got all at once, let's end this." The team positioned themselves around the chamber, preparing for the final assault. Their laughter transmitters were still active, filling the air with echoes of human joy that clashed sharply with the alien environment. The tendrils writhed in response, as though recoiling from the unfamiliar sensation. "On my mark," Ryan said, his voice steady. 3, 2, 1. Now! The fighters unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy beams, targeting the central structure with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions rocked the chamber, sending waves of energy cascading outward. The tendrils flailed wildly, their glow dimming as the structure began to crumble. For a moment it seemed like victory was within reach, but then something unexpected happened. The chamber shook violently, throwing the fighters off balance. From the wreckage of the central structure emerged a massive insectoid creature, the Queen of the Zetherians. Its body was sleek and segmented, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It let out a piercing screech that reverberated through the chamber, causing the pilot's ears to ring. "Everyone fall back," Ryan shouted, his voice urgent. "We need to regroup." The team scrambled to retreat, their fighters darting away from the enraged queen. But the creature was fast, moving with terrifying speed as it pursued them. Energy beams lashed out from its claws, narrowly missing the fleeing humans. Ryan led the way, his mind racing as he searched for a solution. "We can't outrun it," Ethan cried, panic creeping into his voice. "What do we do?" Ryan hesitated, his gaze locking onto the queen's glowing eyes. Then an idea struck him. One so simple, so absurd that it might actually work. "Keep laughing," he said, his tone firm. "Don't stop. No matter what happens, keep laughing." The team obeyed, their laughter echoing through the chamber as they continued their desperate escape. The queen screeched again, its movements becoming erratic as the sound disrupted its focus. Encouraged, Ryan turned his fighter around, facing the creature head-on. "If it's emotion they don't understand, let's give them something unforgettable," he said, activating his transmitter at full power. His laughter boomed through the chamber, loud and defiant, joining the chorus of his teammates. The queen staggered, its attacks growing wild and uncoordinated. Sensing an opportunity, Ryan charged forward, unleashing a final missile directly at the creature's head. The explosion was massive, engulfing the queen in a burst of light and heat. When the smoke cleared, the creature lay motionless, its body broken and lifeless. The tendrils in the chamber went dark, their glow fading completely as the hive mind collapsed. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the ragged breathing of the pilots. Ryan exhaled slowly, his shoulders slumping with exhaustion. "It's over," he said quietly. "We did it." Back on the Eclipse, Olivia watched the readings on her console, her lips curling into a small smile. The alien fleet was retreating, their coordination shattered without the hive mind to guide them. Humanity had won, not through superior firepower but through sheer ingenuity and courage. As the fleet regrouped, laughter echoed through the comms channels, a reminder of the unlikely weapon that had saved them all. Ryan leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a brief moment. They had faced an enemy unlike any other, one that thrived on fear and instinct. But in the end, it was humanity's ability to find joy, even in the face of death, that proved to be their greatest strength. And somewhere, deep in the recesses of space, the echoes of that laughter lingered, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. End of document, Part 3. The victory was bittersweet. The Queen ship lay in ruins, its once mighty hive mind silenced forever. The alien fleet had scattered, retreating into the depths of space like shadows melting away from the light. Humanity had won, but at a cost. The human fleet was battered and bruised, their ships scarred by battle, their crews exhausted. Many fighters hadn't returned, their laughter lost to the void. Yet, despite the losses, there was a sense of triumph that hung heavy in the air. They had faced an enemy unlike any other and emerged victorious. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, staring out at the wreckage floating silently in the blackness. His uniform was torn at the shoulder, singed from a close call during the final assault. He hadn't slept since the battle began, but adrenaline still coursed through his veins. Beside him, Lieutenant Olivia Grant leaned against the railing, her arms crossed as she studied the damage reports scrolling across her console. Her face was pale, her usual calm demeanor tinged with exhaustion. "They're gone," Olivia said finally, breaking the silence. At least for now. Ryan nodded, his gaze fixed on the viewport. For now, he echoed. But we both know they'll be back. This wasn't just some random attack, they were testing us. Olivia frowned, her brow furrowing. Testing? Us? You think they wanted to see how we'd react? It makes sense, Ryan replied, turning to face her. Think about it. They didn't communicate, didn't negotiate. They just attacked. And when we hit them with something they couldn't understand, they retreated. It's almost like they were probing our weaknesses. Olivia let out a slow breath, considering his words. If that's true, then this was only the beginning. Next time, they'll come prepared. Ryan clenched his jaw, his expression grim. Then we need to be ready too. We can't rely on laughter alone to save us next time. Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage and assess the aftermath of the battle. Engineers swarmed over the hull, patching breaches and replacing damaged systems. Medical teams tended to the wounded, their faces etched with fatigue but determined to save every life they could. Despite the chaos, there was a quiet pride among the crew. They had done the impossible. They had defeated an enemy that seemed invincible. Dr. Samantha Reed, the ship's chief scientist, was one of the busiest people on board. She had been analyzing data from the Queen ship ever since the strike team returned, piecing together fragments of information to understand the Zytherians' biology and behavior. Her lab was cluttered with holographic displays, each one showing intricate diagrams and readings that glowed softly in the dim light. When Ryan and Olivia entered the lab, Dr. Reed looked up from her work, her glasses perched precariously on the edge of her nose. "You're not going to believe this," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "I've never seen anything like it." "What is it?" Olivia asked, stepping closer to examine the displays. "Their collective consciousness. It wasn't just a network," Dr. Reed explained, gesturing to the diagrams. "It was alive, literally. The entire hive mind functioned as a single organism, with the Queen acting as its brain. That's why laughter disrupted them so much. To them, emotions, like joy, are completely foreign. Their instincts couldn't process it." Ryan crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. "So laughter isn't just a weapon, it's a vulnerability." "Exactly," Dr. Reed replied. "But here's the thing. I don't think we fully understand the implications yet. Disrupting their hive mind might have unintended consequences." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Dr. Reed hesitated, adjusting her glasses nervously. "Well, when we destroyed the Queen, we essentially severed the connection between the individual, drones and ships. But those fragments of consciousness might not disappear. They could linger, drifting through space or even attaching themselves to other beings." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Are you saying the Zytherians could come back without a queen?" "I'm saying it's possible," Dr. Reed admitted. "We disrupted their system, but we didn't erase it. Fragments of their hive mind might still exist, waiting for a new host." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. "That's not good." "No," Ryan agreed, his voice low. "It's not. But it's also something we can't ignore. If there's even a chance these fragments could survive, we need to prepare for the worst." As the days passed, the fleet limped back toward human-controlled territory, their journey slow and cautious. The mood aboard the ships was subdued, the initial euphoria of victory giving way to a growing sense of unease. Rumors spread among the crew about the Zytherians' potential return, fueled by Dr. Reed's warnings and the lingering scars of battle. Even Ethan Blake, who had earned his place among the heroes of the strike team, found himself haunted by nightmares of glowing eyes and screeching queens. One evening, Ryan gathered the senior officers in the briefing room to discuss their next steps. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension as everyone took their seats. Olivia sat beside Ryan, her hands folded neatly on the table in front of her. Across from them, Dr. Reed adjusted her glasses nervously, while other officers exchanged worried glances. "We need to figure out how to defend ourselves if, or when, the Zytherians return," Ryan began, his voice steady but firm. "Their hive mind made them dangerous, but without it, they could become unpredictable. We can't assume they'll fight the same way twice." Dr. Reed nodded. "Agreed. But we also need to consider the possibility that fragments of their consciousness might try to infiltrate our systems, or worse, our minds. The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. The idea of alien thoughts invading their own was chilling, a nightmare scenario that none of them wanted to contemplate. Still, they couldn't afford to ignore it. "What do you suggest?" Olivia asked, breaking the silence. "We develop countermeasures," Dr. Reed replied. "Something to neutralize or contain any residual fragments before they can cause harm. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "All right. Start working on it immediately. In the meantime, we fortify our defenses and train the fleet to adapt to unconventional tactics. If the Zetherians come back, we'll be ready." The days turned into weeks as the fleet traveled home, their progress slow but steady. Along the way, strange phenomena began to occur. Crew members reported hearing faint whispers in empty corridors, voices that sounded distant yet familiar. Others claimed to feel a presence watching them, a shadow lingering just out of sight. At first, these incidents were dismissed as stress or paranoia, but as they grew more frequent, concern spread throughout the fleet. Dr. Reed monitored the situation closely, running tests to determine whether the Zytherian fragments had somehow latched onto the humans. Her findings were inconclusive but troubling. Energy readings suggested anomalies in certain areas of the ships, though no physical evidence could be found. It was as if the fragments existed in a state between reality and imagination, influencing the crew without leaving a trace. Ryan and Olivia discussed the issue privately, their conversation tense but focused. "We can't panic the crew," Ryan said firmly. "Not until we know for sure what's happening. But if it's real..." Olivia trailed off, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do?" "We deal with it," Ryan replied, his tone resolute. "Just like we dealt with the Queen ship. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the fleet reached human-controlled space. The sight of familiar stars brought a sense of relief to the weary crew, though the unease remained. As the ships docked at the nearest outpost, Ryan and Olivia prepared to debrief command about the battle and its aftermath. They knew their report would raise questions and possibly skepticism, but they also knew the truth had to be told. Before heading to the meeting, Ryan paused on the bridge of the eclipse, gazing out at the stars one last time. Behind him, Olivia joined him, her presence comforting in its familiarity. "We did good," she said quietly. "Against all odds, we survived." Ryan nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, we did. But survival isn't enough. We need to learn from this to be better prepared next time." Olivia placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light but reassuring. "We will, because that's who we are. We adapt. We overcome." As the two of them stood side by side, the echoes of laughter still lingering in their memories, they knew the road ahead would be difficult. But they also knew one thing for certain. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or technology. It was the resilience of the human spirit. And as long as they had that, they could face whatever came next. End of document, Part 4. The debriefing with command was tense. Ryan Carter and Olivia Grant stood in a sterile conference room aboard the outpost, their uniforms still bearing the scorch marks and wear of battle. Across the table sat a panel of high-ranking officers, their expressions unreadable as they listened to the report. Monitors displayed images of the Queen ship's destruction, diagrams of the alien hive mind, and recordings of the laughter broadcasts that had turned the tide of the fight. Despite the evidence, skepticism lingered in the air. "You're telling us," one officer began, his tone sharp, "that you defeated an advanced alien race with laughter?" Ryan met the man's gaze without flinching. "Yes, sir. It wasn't just laughter. It was the disruption of their collective consciousness. Their instincts couldn't process emotions like joy or humor. That gave us an opening." The officer leaned back in his chair, clearly unconvinced. "And now you're suggesting these fragments of their hive mind could pose a threat? Sounds far-fetched." Olivia stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "Sir, we've seen firsthand what they're capable of. Their hive mind made them nearly invincible. Even after we destroyed the Queen, there were anomalies on our ships. Whispers, strange sensations. Dr. Reed's research supports the possibility that fragments of their consciousness may still exist." Another officer chimed in, this time more thoughtful. "If what you're saying is true, then we need to take immediate action. We can't risk these fragments infiltrating human systems, or worse, human minds." Ryan nodded. "That's why we're recommending two things. First, we develop countermeasures to neutralize any residual fragments. Second, we prepare for the possibility that these Etherians will return. If they adapt to laughter as a tactic, we'll need new strategies." The room fell silent as the officers exchanged glances. Finally, the lead officer spoke. "Very well. You have our support, for now. But if this turns out to be baseless fear-mongering, there will be consequences." Ryan and Olivia exchanged a glance, both knowing the stakes. As the meeting adjourned, they left the room feeling a mix of relief and unease. They had Command's backing, but the real challenge lay ahead. Back aboard the Eclipse, Dr. Samantha. Reed worked tirelessly in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays and experimental equipment. Her task was daunting: find a way to detect and neutralize the Zytherian fragments before they caused harm. She collaborated closely with the engineering team, brainstorming ideas and testing prototypes. The crew pitched in wherever they could, their determination fueled by the knowledge that failure wasn't an option. One evening, Ryan visited the lab to check on progress. He found Dr. Reed hunched over a console, her glasses askew and her hair pulled into a messy bun. Lines of stress creased her face, but her eyes sparkled with focus. "Any breakthroughs?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. She glanced up, offering a weary smile. "Not yet, but I'm close. I've been analyzing the energy signatures of the fragments. They're faint, but they leave traces like ripples in water. If we can amplify those ripples, we might be able to track them." Ryan nodded, impressed by her dedication. "Good work. Keep me posted." As he turned to leave, Ethan Blake entered the lab, holding a small device in his hands. "Dr. Reed, I think I've got something," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. "I modified one of the laughter transmitters. Instead of broadcasting sound, it emits a pulse designed to disrupt alien frequencies. Maybe it could help contain the fragments." Dr. Reed raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Let's test it." The next few days were a blur of activity. The crew conducted experiments, fine-tuning Ethan's prototype and integrating it with Dr. Reed's detection system. Meanwhile, the fleet remained on high alert, patrolling the edges of human-controlled space for signs of the Zytherians' return. Tensions ran high, but morale stayed strong. The laughter that had saved them once became a rallying cry, a reminder that humanity's greatest weapon was its ability to adapt. During one patrol, Olivia led a squadron of fighters to investigate a distress signal from a nearby colony. When they arrived, the scene was chilling. The settlement was deserted, its buildings eerily silent. Lights flickered inside homes, casting long shadows across empty streets. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle, just an overwhelming sense of wrongness. "This doesn't make sense," one of the pilots muttered over the comms. "Where is everyone?" Olivia scanned the area, her instincts on high alert. "Stay sharp. Something's not right." As they landed, the squad split into teams to search the settlement. Inside one of the houses, Ethan discovered a journal belonging to one of the colonists. Its pages were filled with frantic scribbles, describing strange occurrences leading up to the disappearance. "It started with laughter," Ethan read aloud. "At first we thought it was harmless, our own laughter echoing through the halls. But then it changed. It wasn't ours anymore." Olivia frowned, her mind racing. Could the Zytherian fragments have influenced them somehow? Made them hear things that weren't real? Ethan nodded grimly. Maybe. Or maybe the fragments latched onto their minds, driving them insane. Before they could discuss further, the ground beneath them trembled. A low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. Outside, the sky darkened as clouds gathered unnaturally fast. Lightning crackled, illuminating shapes moving in the distance, shapes that looked suspiciously like insectoid drones. "Everyone, fall back," Olivia shouted, her voice urgent. "We need to regroup." The squad scrambled toward their ships, firing at the approaching drones as they went. Explosions rocked the settlement, sending debris flying in all directions. Just as they reached their fighters, however, the drones stopped. They hovered silently, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. Then, something unexpected happened. From the drones came a sound, a distorted mechanical imitation of laughter. It was eerie and unsettling, completely devoid of joy. The sound sent chills down the spines of the pilots, their earlier triumphs suddenly feeling hollow. "They're mocking us," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "No," Olivia corrected him, her expression grim. "They're learning." Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew analyzed footage of the encounter, trying to understand what had happened. The drone's laughter wasn't random. It was deliberate, a reflection of these Etherean fragments adapting to human tactics. They had taken the very thing that had defeated them and turned it into a weapon. Ryan watched the playback, his jaw tightening. "They're evolving," he said finally, "using our own emotions against us." Olivia nodded, her mind working furiously. If laughter worked because it confused them, then their version of laughter is meant to unnerve us, to make us doubt ourselves. "We can't let them win," Ryan replied firmly. "We need to stay one step ahead." Dr. Reed and Ethan redoubled their efforts, refining the prototype device to counteract the Zetherians' new tactic. The laughter pulse emitter showed promise, disrupting the drone's coordination during simulated tests. With some adjustments, it could serve as both a detection tool and a weapon. As the days passed, the fleet prepared for another confrontation. Training sessions focused on mental resilience as much as physical combat, teaching the crew how to remain calm under psychological pressure. Laughter became less of a joke and more of a strategy, a symbol of humanity's refusal to give in to fear. Finally, the moment came. Sensors picked up movement near the edge of human territory, a massive armada of alien ships emerging from hyperspace. This time, the Zetherians didn't hesitate. They attacked immediately, their weapons firing bursts of chaotic energy that disrupted shields and crippled engines. But humanity was ready. Ryan led the charge, his fighter equipped with the upgraded laughter pulse emitter. As the battle raged, he activated the device, unleashing a wave of energy that rippled through space. The alien ships faltered, their movements becoming erratic as the fragments of their hive mind struggled to adapt. Around him, the rest of the fleet followed suit, their laughter no longer a sign of amusement but of defiance. For hours the battle waged on, neither side willing to yield. But slowly, inexorably, the tide turned. Humanity's ingenuity and courage carried them through, proving once again that their strength lay not in brute force, but in their ability to evolve. As the last of the alien ships retreated, Ryan allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. They had faced an enemy that thrived on instinct and fear, and they had won. Not because they were stronger, but because they were smarter. Because they refused to let fear define them. And as the echoes of laughter faded into the void, Ryan knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, humanity would be ready. End of document, Part 5.